Hey everyone, welcome into DomTime. It's our weekly roundup show where we take a look at all items that maybe we're not doing a full show on, with some of the most plugged in people here locally. Phil Herron is the editor of the Delco Times and their website and their newspaper. He's got some great columnists. He himself is top notch. With Heron's Nest is one of my favorite things to find. Let's talk about something else that's happened here in the area just the last couple of days. And I had on the attorney for the guy that seems to be public enemy number one, the crane operator in the building collapse. Where I see this is up and down the line, a whole chain of people and public policy, Phil, that was at play. And now we have a grand jury. You know, grand juries can be good things. They give broader powers to the DA, or they can be a way of the DA punning and not going after some of the bigger players versus the guy who was driving the crane when he pulled the building down.
You know, it's interesting, Dom. One of the things that I'm always telling my staff is anytime you have a big story like this, eventually just watch the tentacles go out, and it'll wind up in Delaware County. And lo and behold, didn't we find out Boor Davis, one of the victims, lived in Darby Borough. Another woman, Mary Simpson, was a Haverford High School alum. So we obviously had an interest in this story, and I think you're right. It just strikes me from the get-go is it just everyone sort of scratching their head saying, how could they allow this to happen?
Would it happen down in a place like Delaware County by and large? Is it more regulated in the suburbs versus this, do you think?
The thing that you have once you get out into the counties is that you go sort of a little more micromanagement and it comes down to the municipalities. And most of the towns in Delaware County run a pretty strident hand on that kind of thing. As you know, once you get into the city, my guess is that you have enough of these projects going on that it just sort of slides by.
22nd and Market, though, right across from the AFL-CIO
Hard
building.
to believe.
Now, some of the public policy things that I see here is we want criminals to get back into the mainstream to do this. Both the contractor and the guy driving are both convicted criminals, multiple times, multiple other arrests, big-time type of stuff. And yet, somehow or another, this guy's able to operate a very sensitive bit of machinery. The other guy's able to do a project with no retainer, nothing, over top of women, the two that you mentioned, that are shopping in a thrift store.
The amazing thing of a lot of the different things that started to fall out of out of the woodwork in this rubble and everything is one of the first things that leaped off the page at me was that most of the people that they talked to estimated that this was very likely somewhere in the vicinity of a $250,000 project. That this guy bid $10,000 on, and all of a sudden,
be enough.
Done deal.
You would think now. Out in Delaware County and out in the suburbs, I think the L&I, whatever the people are that are out there, it's a little bit different, I think. Corruption could be anywhere. But in Philadelphia, this is Keystone Cops sort of thing. It's making national news, and the reason is people are seeing some of these issues.
Yeah, well, I think that people, again, look to their government entities for certain services. A lot of the stuff flies by either over or under the radar. But there are some things that people really want. They want to know that their trash is going to be picked up. They want to know when it snows that their streets are going to be shoveled. And they want to know when you're working in a Salvation Army thrift store and they're knocking down the building next door that it's not going to fall in on your head.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
And the other thing that was at play here was the number of instances and people saying, you know what, this doesn't look right. This looks like it's not going to, not going to end real well. And everyone doing that, and yet still it managed to slide by.
Here's the thing, in America's biggest union town, arguably the last big union town, with all the negatives I often see
all the problems they've had at the convention center.
Right, all that. I mean, you would think here, of all places, they would have put a stop to it. I can't get an answer why the rat was out there. I'm still working on the rat was not out there. All right, now
the rat was at Marion for a couple of days.
It still might be there.
No, now, they've resolved. They've got a deal.
Good to hear the rat will not be there bothering people from around the world. What's with this rat? Now, another story that made national news, big time news, and with my show, definite opinions on this. The little girl, Sarah, is out there in Delaware County, and every number of politicians have come to her aid to get a lung transplant. Where does that stand tonight? She's on the list. She has a score.
Senator Toomey had a press offering this morning. He visited there at CHOP with the family. She's still waiting. She looks like she's, no terrible change in her condition, still really obviously struggling in the end stages of cystic fibrosis. And just, Dom, just a terrible, terrible story. Our position has been, in all honesty, we couldn't blame Secretary Sebelius
Oh,
for the
no, wait a
stand
minute.
that
All
she
right,
took.
let's
There
get
you
the
go.
jousting. All
There
right,
you go.
let's get the coat off.
Our-
All right, yeah.
Our point is, aren't these the people who have been screaming from the rooftops saying we don't want government making these kinds of decisions?
But government
Except
did
in
make
this
a decision.
case.
Wait a minute, they did make a decision. They put an arbitrary
It
rule
was
up
already
there.
in place.
That from
The
2004.
agency had already had
So
that
we're gonna let her
policy
die?
in place. If I'm her parents, I'm doing exactly the same thing.
No, but
I
I'm
am
asking
screaming.
you, Sebelius is the czar under Obamacare. This is where we're afraid of. I won't mention the paper. I want to go back on that editorial. I remember the day.
I remember the phone call.
The phone
What are
call.
you, insane, Phil?
Yeah, Phil, right. I'm in Ardmore we're leading a rally, and here the Delco Times, big headlines,
That's it.
Obama for
That's
president.
us.
No, but in seriousness, it's not just the parents here. It's a broader type of thing. The rule is arbitrary,
See,
and
Don,
that's what I think is the problem.
I am not of the belief, and I think the paper's position has been, this has nothing to do with Obamacare.
Okay.
Let's rule out the idea of death panels or anything
No, I'm not
like
calling
that.
them death panels,
This
but
is
arbitrary
This is a
rules.
policy that was in place,
Right.
and Secretary Sebelius did say that she is going to ask, at least at that point, she
Wait,
was asking for a review of the
Right, but
policy,
they take
but
6
she
months
was
to a year.
not going to intervene. And that takes us into the idea of, as we found out, where do you draw that line now? The very next day, you had another young
Right.
man's family
And
from New
even
York
that-
City,
no, it makes the point
right
even-
back in court.
It makes the point even more, though, that it's not about her, the little girl out in Delco.
Yeah.
It's about all of them.
Yeah.
It's an arbitrary rule. I go with
If
chop.
you
I
want
don't
to
wanna
change
pull
the
right.
rule, then that's an argument to have. But I don't
Right.
blame Secretary Sebelius for saying,
All right.
I'm going to be Solomon here and I'm going to come in and make this rule.
All right, coming up, more of all things happening out in Delaware County and across the area and even nationally with Phil Herron, Herron's Nest, the Delco Times, the editor with Dom Giordano on DomTime.